Part 1. Wind and Fire. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and distant rain across the Apache camp as Talon stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the sun bleed orange into the horizon. His weathered hands rested on the Winchester at his side, though his mind was far from warfare tonight. After 32 winters, the elders had spoken it was time for him to take a wife. "You've waited too long," his mother had said that morning, her gnarled fingers working deer-hide with practiced ease. A man needs more than his rifle and his pride to keep him warm. Talon had nodded, knowing she spoke truth. He'd spent years earning his place among the warriors, leading raids against Mexican settlements and rival tribes, building a reputation that commanded respect. Now, with relative peace settling over their territory, the elders insisted he needed a family, sons to carry his name, daughters to strengthen alliances. He'd imagined her already, this wife they would bring him, young, perhaps 16 or 17 summers, with downcast eyes and gentle hands, pure, untouched by hardship beyond what all Apache women knew, someone who would tend his lodge quietly, bear his children without complaint, and look at him with the proper mixture of respect and devotion. The sound of approaching horses pulled him from his thoughts. 3 riders crested the hill, their silhouettes dark against the dying light. He recognized 2 immediately, Walking Cloud and Stonefoot from the White Mountain Band. The third figure, smaller and wrapped in a blanket, must be the bride. Talon straightened his shoulders and walked back toward the central fire where the elders waited. His lodge stood ready, freshly cleaned and provisioned. Everything was prepared for the new life that would begin tonight. "They come," announced Red Crow, the eldest of their council. The old man's face, mapped with 1,000 wrinkles, showed no emotion. "Let us see what the White Mountain people have brought." The riders dismounted near the fire. Walking Cloud, a man Talon had traded with many times, stepped forward with formal greetings. Stonefoot remained by the horses, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. The third figure stayed mounted, hidden beneath the blanket. "We bring what was promised," Walking Cloud said, though something in his voice made Talon's instincts sharpen. "A woman for Talon of the Chiricahua." "Then let her come forward," Red Crow commanded. The figure slid from the horse with surprising grace. As the blanket fell away, Talon felt his expectations shatter like pottery against stone. She was no maiden of 16 summers. This woman had lived at least 25 winters, perhaps more, where he'd expected slender youth. She possessed curves that spoke of maturity, full hips that had known childbirth, breasts that strained against her doe-skin dress. Her face, while still beautiful, bore the lines of someone who had laughed and wept and survived. Most shocking were her eyes, not downcast and demure, but meeting his directly with a gaze that held storms. The silence stretched like a taut bowstring. Talon heard his mother's sharp intake of breath, felt the weight of the elder's surprise. This was not what had been discussed. This was not what he'd been promised. "This is Elena," Walking Cloud said, using the Spanish name that marked her as one who'd lived among the Mexicans. "She is recently widowed. Her husband died in the sickness that took many of our people last winter." A widow? Not pure, not young. Everything he hadn't wanted. "The agreement was for a maiden," Talon said, his voice controlled despite the anger building in his chest. "This is not what was promised." Walking Cloud's jaw tightened. "The agreement was for a wife. Elena is strong, skilled, and proven fertile. She bore 3 children to her first husband." "Where are these children?" Red Crow asked. "Dead." Elena spoke for the first time, her voice carrying a slight Spanish accent. "The same sickness that took their father." Another strike against her. A woman who couldn't keep her children alive, who carried the taint of Mexican influence. Talon felt the eyes of his people upon him, waiting to see how he would handle this insult. "I will not accept her," he said flatly. "Return her to your people." "You will accept her," Stonefoot spoke up. stepping into the firelight. "Or there will be no alliance between our bands, no shared hunting grounds, no trade." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Talon's hand moved instinctively toward his knife, but Red Crow raised a weathered palm. "Peace," the elders said. "Let us not speak of breaking alliances over this. The woman is here. The ceremony can proceed." "No," Talon said. "I wanted—" He caught himself before saying more. Aware of how petty his complaints would sound, that he'd wanted someone young and pure, someone who would look at him with awe instead of that direct, challenging stare. "What you want and what you need are often different things," his mother said quietly, but loud enough for all to hear. "Look at her properly, my son." Against his will. Talon really looked. Elena stood straight despite the hostile reception, her shoulders back and chin raised. The firelight caught the copper undertones in her skin, highlighted the glossy black of her hair. Her hands, he noticed, bore the calluses of hard work but moved with uncommon grace. When she shifted slightly, he caught the outline of a knife at her belt, unusual for a woman at a wedding ceremony. "I can speak for myself," Elena said, addressing him directly in fluent Apache, though her accent colored the words. "I am not a young girl to be traded like a horse. I am here because my band cannot support another widow through winter. You need a wife. I need a home. If you want a child to warm your bed and worship your shadow, send me back. If you want a woman who can skin a deer, defend your lodge, and give you strong sons, then stop wasting time with your wounded pride." Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. No woman spoke to a warrior like that, especially not during wedding negotiations. Talon felt heat rise in his face, anger mixed with something else he couldn't name. "You dare!" "I dare speak truth," she interrupted. The Apache expected purity and youth. What you got is a woman who knows her worth. Decide. The challenge in her eyes made something twist in his chest. This was not how he'd imagined this night, not the shy bride being led to his lodge, but a woman who stood before him as an equal, daring him to reject her. Red Crow cleared his throat. "The moon rises. A decision must be made." Talon looked around the circle of faces. His mother watched him with knowing eyes. The other warriors waited to see if he would accept this insult to his honor or risk breaking the alliance. Walking Cloud and Stonefoot stood ready to leave with their offering. And Elena, she simply waited, those storm-dark eyes never leaving his face. The wind gusted through the camp, sending sparks swirling from the fire. In that moment, Talon realized he stood at a crossroads far different from what he'd expected. This wasn't about taking a wife anymore. This was about his pride warring with necessity, his dreams of control clashing with the reality before him. He began, then stopped. The words stuck in his throat like thorns. "Perhaps," his mother suggested gently, "you should speak with her, alone, before you decide." It was irregular, but these were irregular circumstances. Talon nodded curtly and gestured for Elena to follow him away from the fire. She came without hesitation, matching his stride as they walked to the edge of the camp where the shadows grew thick. "Why did you agree to this?" he asked when they were out of earshot. "You clearly don't want to be here." She laughed, but it held no humor. "I wanted my children to live. I wanted my husband to survive the sickness. I wanted many things. Want is a luxury I can't afford." Her expression softened slightly. "But I will not pretend to be something I'm not. If you take me as wife, know what you're getting." "And what is that?" "A woman who has buried too much to fear your displeasure. A woman who can shoot as straight as any warrior. Who learned to defend herself when her husband was gone for months. A woman who—" She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Who will not pretend innocence she doesn't possess or submission she doesn't feel." "You make yourself sound like a poor bargain." "I make myself sound like truth. The question is whether you're man enough to handle truth, or if you need pretty lies to feel important." The challenge sparked his anger again. "You know nothing about me." I know you're called Talon the Relentless. I know you led the raid on the Mexican fort at Copper Creek. I know you've never taken a wife because you were waiting for perfection." She stepped closer, and he caught her scent smoke and sage and something uniquely feminine. "I know you're disappointed, but I also know that disappointment is just another word for an expectation that was always a fantasy." The wind gusted again, pressing her dress against her body, outlining those curves that were so different from what he'd imagined. Talon found himself noting the way she planted her feet, ready for anything, the way her hand stayed near that knife. This was a woman who had survived loss and hardship, and emerged harder for it. Not what he'd wanted, but perhaps, a treacherous voice whispered in his mind, what he needed. "If I accept you," he said slowly, "there will be conditions. Such as, you will respect my position. In public, you will... In public, I will give you the respect your actions earn." She interrupted. "In private, I will speak as I am speaking now. If that's unacceptable, we're done here." No woman had ever spoken to him this way. It should have enraged him. Instead, he found himself oddly intrigued by her audacity. A shout from the camp interrupted whatever he might have said. They turned to see a rider approaching fast, his horse lathered with sweat. "Raiders!" the man gasped as he tumbled from his mount. "Mexican soldiers, 3 days' ride south, moving this way." The wedding suddenly seemed less important than preparing for battle, but Red Crow's voice cut through the rising commotion. "We have a ceremony to complete first, Talon. What is your decision?" He looked at Elena, who watched him with those dark, knowing eyes. Not what he'd expected, not what he'd dreamed during all those nights alone, but the alliance was needed. The band needed strength for whatever was coming. And perhaps, though he'd never admit it aloud, he was curious what it would be like to have a woman who didn't fear him. "I accept," he said, the words tasting strange on his tongue. "Let the ceremony proceed." Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, or respect. She inclined her head slightly, the first gesture of deference she'd shown. As they walked back to the fire together, Talon couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he hadn't seen coming. The Apache had expected purity and youth. What he'd gotten was a curvy woman whose very presence seemed to undo his carefully maintained control. The wind whispered through the camp, carrying the scent of coming rain and distant trouble. But for now, there was a wedding to complete, a fire to tend, and a future that looked nothing like what he'd imagined. Part 2, Confrontation in the Lodge. The morning after the ceremony found Talon standing in the entrance of his lodge, watching Elena reorganize everything he owned. She moved with purposeful efficiency, sorting through his belongings as if she'd lived there for years rather than one night. "The cooking pots go near the fire," she said without looking up. "Not stacked in the corner where smoke will blacken them uselessly." "They were fine where they were," Talon said, his jaw tight. Fine for a man living alone, perhaps. She lifted a water gourd, examined it critically, then set it aside. "This has a crack. It needs mending or replacing." He'd used that gourd for 3 years without issue. It works well enough. Elena finally looked at him, one eyebrow raised. "Is well enough your standard for everything? No wonder you waited so long to marry." The barb stung more than he cared to admit. Last night, after the brief ceremony, she'd entered his lodge without ceremony, claimed the left side for her belongings, and fell asleep while he still sat by the dying fire, wondering what he'd done. Now, in the harsh morning light, she seemed to fill the space entirely, not just physically, though her presence was impossible to ignore as she bent to examine his stores, but with an energy that made his previously peaceful lodge feel like a battlefield. "Don't move that," he said sharply as she reached for his war bundle. Her hand stopped. "I wasn't going to open it. Just move it to a safer place. Unless you prefer sacred items sitting where anyone might stumble over them." She was right, which irritated him further. He grabbed the bundle himself, placing it on the high shelf where it should have been all along. "Better," she said, returning to her sorting. "Your mother will visit soon. I won't have her thinking you married a woman who keeps a slovenly lodge. My mother has visited before without complaint. Your mother was being polite to her stubborn son who refused to take a wife." Elena straightened, hands on her hips. The gesture pulled her dress tight, and Talon found his eyes drawn to her curves before he forced them away. Now she'll expect better. A scratching at the lodge entrance interrupted them. "May I enter?" came a young voice. "Come," Talon called. Little Crow, one of the boys who helped with the horses, peered inside nervously. His eyes went wide at the sight of Elena. Word had already spread through camp about Talon's unexpected bride, the Mexican widow who spoke to warriors like an equal. The men gathered to discuss the raiders. The boy said, "Red Crow summons you." "I'll come," Talon said, grateful for the escape. He reached for his rifle, then paused as Elena spoke. "What should I prepare for the meeting? How many will need feeding?" He blinked. Maria, his brother's wife, never involved herself in war councils. Women don't. I asked how many, not for permission. She was already checking their food stores. "If you're discussing battle, the men will need feeding. It's practical, not intrusion." Little Crow watched this exchange with fascination. Talon could imagine the story spreading through camp within the hour. "Perhaps 10, he said finally. "But you don't need—" "10? Then go to your meeting. I'll handle this." Dismissed from his own lodge. The absurdity of it should have enraged him. Instead, he found himself walking away with something that felt dangerously close to amusement. The War Council proved frustrating. The scouts confirmed Mexican troops moving north, but their purpose remained unclear. Some argued for preemptive strikes, others for waiting. Talon found his attention wandering what devastation Elena was wreaking on his carefully ordered life. "Your thoughts, Talon," Red Crow prompted. He forced himself to focus. "We need more information. Send scouts to the Mexican settlements. Learn if they seek us specifically or just patrol." "Wise words," said Joseph Standing Bear, one of the older warriors. "Though I'm surprised you can think of strategy with a new wife waiting." The men chuckled knowingly, especially one who speaks her mind so freely. "A man should control his woman," muttered Samuel Black Wolf, who'd lost his own wife to another man's lodge. "Not let her order him about." "Did she order me here?" Talon asked mildly. "Strange. I thought I came of my own will." More laughter, though Black Wolf's scowl deepened. "You know what I mean. Already she changes your lodge. Next she'll—" He stopped as the scent of roasting meat drifted through the camp. Rich, seasoned with herbs Talon didn't recognize. His stomach growled, reminding him he'd eaten nothing since yesterday. "Someone cooks well," Red Crow observed. "Shall we continue while we eat?" The men emerged to find Elena had somehow organized several women to prepare a meal. Not the simple fare usually served at quick gatherings, but properly seasoned meat, fresh bread, and pine nut soup. She moved among the cooking fires with natural authority, directing without seeming to command. "How did she—" Joseph began, then shook his head. "My own wife is there, helping gladly. Yesterday she called the widow that Mexican woman. Now look." Talon looked. The women worked together easily, some laughing at something Elena said. She'd changed into a different dress, still properly Apache, but somehow more flattering to her figure. When she bent to check the bread, several younger warriors suddenly found reasons to walk nearby. "Your wife has skills," Red Crow said approvingly. "This is good." Black Wolf made a disgusted sound. "She bribes with food. A warrior's wife should be silent, obedient." "Hungry." Elena appeared beside them, holding a laden plate. She offered it to Black Wolf with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You seem upset. Perhaps food will help." The direct confrontation made Black Wolf step back. "I need nothing from you." "No," she tilted her head. "Then perhaps you'd prefer to cook for yourself. I'm sure the other men won't mind waiting while you demonstrate proper wifely silence." She turned to Talon. "Unless you prefer I stop, I wouldn't want to embarrass you with my—" what was the word? Disobedience. The challenge in her voice was unmistakable. Every man present waited to see how Talon would respond. This was the test. Would he put her in her place or let her mockery stand? "The food smells good," he said finally. "We should eat while it's hot." Not quite approval, not quite rebuke. Elena's eyes glinted with something that might have been respect. She served the elders first, showing proper deference, then distributed food to the others. When she reached Talon, their fingers brushed as she handed him the plate. The brief contact sent unexpected heat through him. "Your lodge will be ready when you return," she said quietly, for his ears alone. "Try not to track mud through it." The sheer audacity made him fight back a smile. "I'll do my best." The meal proceeded with surprising ease. Elena and the women kept food flowing, and Talon noticed how she deflected praise to others, building alliances with subtle skill. By the time the men returned to discussing strategy, she'd won over half the camp without seeming to try. "Your wife," Red Crow said later, pulling Talon aside. "She's not what you expected." "No," Talon admitted. "Good. Expectations are for young men. You're a leader now. You need a woman who can think, not just obey." The elder's eyes twinkled. "Though she'll test you. That kind always does." "Test him," as if she hadn't been testing him since the moment she dropped that blanket and met his eyes without flinching. Talon returned to his lodge as sunset painted the sky crimson. He paused at the entrance, uncertain what he'd find. The interior was transformed, still recognizably his space, but cleaner, more organized. She'd added small touches, herbs hanging to dry, a new mat by the entrance, his weapons arranged for easy access. Elena sat by the fire, mending the cracked gourd with pine pitch. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, catching the firelight. For a moment, watching her work with focused concentration, he saw her differently. Not as the challenger who disrupted his life, but as a woman making the best of difficult circumstances. "It's good work," he said, meaning more than just the gourd. She looked up, surprised. "You're back early. The meetings usually last longer." "We said what needed saying." He sat across from her, maintaining careful distance. The food was appreciated. "It was nothing. Your stores are good. They just needed proper use." She set the gourd aside to finish drying. "Your mother visited." His stomach tightened. "And—" "She inspected everything, asked pointed questions about my intentions, and warned me that her son was particular about his space." Elena smiled slightly. "I told her I'd noticed. That's all. She also mentioned you once refused to marry the daughter of a chief because she giggled too much, and that you spent 3 days arranging your lodge exactly how you wanted it before declaring yourself satisfied." Heat rose in his face. "My mother talks too much." "She's protective. It's good." Elena pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. The casual pose made her seem younger, less formidable. "She wants you happy. And you—" The question escaped before he could stop it. "What do you want?" She was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "To not be a burden, to earn my place, to—" She stopped, shook her head. "It doesn't matter what I want. We both know why I'm here." The honesty disarmed him. Since her arrival, she'd been all sharp edges and challenges. This glimpse of vulnerability caught him unprepared. "The men say I should control you better," he said, curious how she'd respond. Elena laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "The men say many things. Do you always listen? Black Wolf thinks you're too bold. Black Wolf thinks women should be furniture that cooks and breeds." The sharpness returned to her voice. Is that what you think? I think... He paused, choosing words carefully. I think I don't know what to think about you. Fair enough. She rose gracefully, moving to tend something simmering over the fire. I don't know what to think about you either. The fierce warrior who leads raids but arranges his belongings like an old woman. The man who wanted a child bride but accepted a used widow. Don't call yourself that. She glanced back, surprised by his sharp tone. You're not used, he said. You survived. There's a difference. For the first time since they'd met, Elena seemed truly speechless. She turned back to the fire, but he caught the slight tremor in her hands. The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable but no longer hostile. Outside, the camp settled into evening routines. Someone played a flute in the distance, the melody haunting and sweet. I should tell you, Elena said finally, about my husband, about what happened. You don't owe me explanations. Perhaps not, but you should know who shares your lodge. She served the stew into bowls, handed him one. His name was James, a trader's son, half Mexican, half Anglo, not fully accepted by either people. We met when I was 15, working in my uncle's trading post. Talon ate quietly, letting her speak. He was kind, gentle, nothing like the warriors who usually came to trade. We married against my family's wishes. They wanted me to marry Mexican, stay Catholic. His people wanted him to marry white, so we made our own way. The children. 2 boys, 1 girl. Her voice stayed steady, but her knuckles whitened where she gripped her bowl. The fever took them in 3 days. James lasted another week, delirious, calling for them. She set her bowl aside. The White Mountain people took me in because James had traded fairly with them, but a widow with no children, no family to support her. They needed the alliance more than they needed another mouth to feed. Talon finished. Yes, she met his eyes. So here I am. Not pure, not young, not what anyone would choose, but I'll earn my keep. I know plants that heal, how to preserve meat for long journeys, how to shoot straight when needed. I can give you children if that's what you want, or simply maintain your lodge if it isn't. But I won't pretend to be meek, and I won't apologize for surviving. The fierce declaration stirred something in him. This woman who'd lost everything still stood proud, still challenged the world to accept her as she was. I don't want you meek, he heard himself say. She studied him. What do you want? He didn't know. That was the problem. Everything he'd thought he wanted had crumbled the moment she'd appeared. Now, sitting in his transformed lodge with this complicated woman, he couldn't envision the simple life he'd planned. A commotion outside saved him from answering. Dogs barking, horses stirring. He grabbed his rifle, was at the entrance in 2 strides. Riders, called a sentry, Apache from the south. Elena appeared beside him, that knife now openly at her belt. Trouble. Maybe. He glanced at her. Stay in the lodge. If there's fighting, I'm more use outside. There won't be. He stopped as she pushed past him, moving toward the gathering crowd. Woman, you can't just... Watch me. And despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the complete upheaval of his ordered life, Talon found himself doing exactly that. Watching her move through his world like she'd always belonged there, changing everything she touched, including, he was beginning to suspect, him. Part 3, Trial by Fire. The attack came with the false dawn, when the sky held just enough light to see shapes, but not details. Talon woke to the thunder of hooves and the sharp crack of rifle fire splitting the morning air. Raiders, the cry went up across the camp. To arms. He rolled from his bedding, reaching for his Winchester in one practiced motion. Beside him, Elena was already moving, that knife in her hand and his spare ammunition in the other. Mexican soldiers, she asked, tossing him the cartridge belt. No, Apache. He recognized the war cries. "Renegades from the south! Stay here!" Like hell. Before he could argue, she was gone, slipping through the lodge entrance with her rifle when had she grabbed that held ready. Talon cursed and followed, plunging into chaos. The camp erupted in gunfire and screams. Raiders on horseback thundered between lodges, shooting at anything that moved. Women grabbed children, running for the rocky outcroppings that offered cover. Warriors rushed to defensive positions, returning fire. Talon dropped to one knee behind a wagon, sighting down his rifle. A raider bore down on Running Deer's lodge where the elder's grandchildren slept. Talon's shot took him center mass, sending him tumbling from his mount. Movement to his left. Elena, using an overturned cooking pot for cover, calmly aimed and fired. Her target jerked and veered away, clutching his shoulder. "You shoot well for a trader's wife," Talon called. "You talk too much for a warrior," she shot back, already reloading. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then Samuel Black Wolf's scream wiped any humor from the moment. The warrior who'd criticized Elena stumbled into view, an arrow protruding from his thigh. A mounted raider closed in for the killing blow. Elena moved before Talon could react. She broke cover, running not away but toward Black Wolf. The raider swung his war club. Elena dropped, sliding beneath the horse's belly, came up on the other side. Her knife flashed. The raider's stirrup leather parted, sending him crashing to the ground. Black Wolf's hatchet finished him. "Behind you!" Talon roared. Elena spun as another raider charged. No time to aim properly. Talon watched her throw the knife not at the man, but at his horse's legs. The animal screamed, stumbled. Its rider flew over its head, landing hard. He didn't get up. More riders poured into camp. These weren't random renegades, but an organized war party, likely after horses and supplies. Talon counted at least 20, maybe more. The horse herd. Joseph Standing Bear pointed toward the canyon where their mounts grazed. Several raiders headed that direction. Without horses, the band would be helpless. Elena Talon didn't think, just called her name. She looked up, understood immediately. "Go," she said. "I'll hold here." He wanted to protest sending her into danger, went against every instinct. But she was already moving, organizing the women who could shoot into a defensive line. Maria and 2 others joined her, faces grim but determined. Talon ran for the horses, Joseph and 3 other warriors beside him. They had to protect the herd or everything was lost. The canyon narrowed at its entrance, a natural defensive position. Talon and his men spread out among the rocks, picking targets. Raiders who'd made it past fell back under their concentrated fire. "They're circling," Joseph warned. Sure enough, riders appeared on the ridge above, seeking another way down. Talon cursed. They couldn't defend both positions with so few men. A rifle cracked from above. One of the ridge riders toppled. Another shot. Another fall. Talon glimpsed movement. Elena and 2 women had somehow reached the high ground. "That woman of yours," Joseph panted between shots. "She's something." Yes, Talon thought. She certainly was. He pushed the thought aside, focused on the battle. Raiders kept coming, desperate now. Dawn light revealed their losses, bodies scattered across the camp approaches. But Talon's people had suffered too. He saw David Bent Arrow down, clutching his stomach. Young William Fox lay still near the central fire. A war cry split the air. The raid leader, identified by his elaborate headdress, rallied his remaining men for a final assault. They formed up, preparing to charge the defensive line where Elena and the women held. "No!" Talon left his position, running back toward camp. He wouldn't reach them in time. The raiders would overwhelm the small group of defenders. Elena stood in the center of her makeshift line, rifle steady. Talon saw her lips moving, counting shots. He realized, waiting for the right moment. "Now!" Her voice carried clear across the battlefield. The women fired in unison. Horses screamed. Men fell. The charge faltered but didn't break. The survivors came on, fury in their cries. Elena threw her empty rifle aside, pulled a pistol Talon hadn't known she carried. The raid leader bore down on her. War lance lowered. She didn't flinch, didn't run. At the last possible second, she dove left. The lance missed by inches. Her pistol barked twice. The leader swayed, slumped, fell. Seeing their leader down broke the raiders' spirit. They wheeled away, fleeing back the way they'd come. A few parting shots chased them, but the battle was over. Talon reached Elena as she retrieved her rifle, checking it for damage with practiced hands. Blood streaked her face, not her own. He realized with relief. "You were supposed to stay in the lodge," he said. "You were supposed to duck when that arrow came at your head." She gestured to his ear, where blood trickled from a graze he hadn't noticed. Around them, the camp stirred to life. Women emerged from hiding. Warriors checked the dead, ensuring no wounded enemies remained to threaten them. The cost became clear in the growing light: 3 dead, 7 wounded, 2 lodges burned. Elena, Little Crow, ran up, tears streaming. "My sister, she's hurt." Without hesitation, Elena followed the boy. Talon trailed behind, watching her shift from warrior to healer. The girl, no more than 8 summers, lay unconscious with an ugly gash on her scalp. "Head wounds bleed much, but aren't always serious," Elena murmured, examining the injury with gentle fingers. "Bring water, clean cloth. Maria, I need the medicine bundle from my lodge, the one wrapped in blue cloth." She worked with sure efficiency, cleaning and binding the wound. The girl stirred, whimpering. "Shh, little one. You're safe. Your brother protected you well." Elena smoothed the child's hair, humming something that sounded like a Spanish lullaby. "Will she live?" Little Crow asked. "She'll have a scar to make her interesting to future husbands," Elena said lightly, making the boy smile through his tears. "Keep her still today. I'll check again tonight." Talon found himself transfixed by this new facet of her. The fierce woman who'd fought beside warriors now tended wounded with a mother's touch. When had his orderly life become so complex? "Talon!" Red Crow's voice pulled him from his thoughts. The elder looked tired but proud. "Your woman fought well. Black Wolf owes her his life." "She's not," Talon stopped. Not his woman. After what they'd just survived together, the protest seemed foolish. Elena stood, wiping bloody hands on her ruined dress. She looked at Talon, something unreadable in those dark eyes. "We need to burn the dead," she said quietly. "Their people will want to know they were treated with respect. You'd honor enemies who tried to kill us. Death ends all feuds. My husband taught me that." She moved past him toward the fallen raiders. "Besides, they fought bravely. That deserves recognition, even from enemies." Black Wolf limped over, supported by his nephew. The warrior who'd called Elena too bold now looked at her with something approaching awe. "I owe you a debt," he said stiffly. "You owe me nothing. We're all one people here." She glanced at his bandaged thigh. "That needs checking. The arrow might have left splinters." Yes?" Black Wolf seemed at a loss. "Thank you." The sun climbed higher, revealing the full scope of the night's work. Talon organized the men to strengthen defenses while Elena led the women in tending wounded and preparing the dead. They worked in natural rhythm, as if they'd done this together for years. "Your wife," Joseph said, joining Talon at the burned remains of a lodge. "She's not what you expected." That phrase again. Talon was getting tired of hearing it. "No." "Lucky for us." Joseph nodded toward where Elena knelt beside David Bent Arrow, changing his bandages. "Maria says she knows healing songs from 3 different peoples. Says those Mexican priests taught her herb lore no Apache knows. She saved Black Wolf. She saved more than him. That defensive line she organized kept them from flanking us." Joseph spat tobacco juice. Some of the young men are calling her Wolf Woman, say she fought like a spirit. Wolf Woman. It suited her better than the Spanish name Elena. As if sensing his thoughts, she looked up, caught him watching. For a moment, something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of what they'd shared in battle. Then young Thomas Crowhorse ran up, babbling about finding a wounded raider hiding in the rocks. And the moment passed. The hidden raider proved to be barely more than a boy, perhaps 15 summers, with a bullet wound in his leg. The warriors wanted to finish him, but Elena intervened. "He's a child," she said firmly. "We don't kill children." "He tried to kill us," someone protested, and failed. She knelt beside the terrified boy, speaking in rapid Spanish. His eyes widened. He replied hesitantly. "He says his name is Miguel. His village is starving. The raiders promised food for families if young men joined them." "Not our problem," Black Wolf growled, though with less venom than usual. "It could be," Elena countered. "If we send him back healed, with food, we might prevent future raids. Dead. He's just another corpse. Alive. He's a messenger." She looked to Talon, deferring to his authority in public as promised. But her eyes held that familiar challenge: do the expected thing or the right thing. Tend his wounds. Talon decided. "We'll decide his fate when he's healed." Some grumbled, but Elena was already working, murmuring to the boy in Spanish as she cleaned his injury. The fear slowly left his face, replaced by wary hope. Night fell before they finished dealing with the aftermath. The dead were burned with proper ceremony. The wounded made as comfortable as possible. Guards posted in case the raiders returned, though Talon doubted they would. Not after such losses. He found Elena by the central fire, finally resting. She'd washed and changed, but exhaustion marked her features. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "You should sleep," he said, sitting beside her. "Soon, I want to check the wounded once more. They'll survive the night without you." "Maybe?" She stared into the flames. "I couldn't save them all. That boy, William Fox, he was so young." "Death comes when it comes. You saved who you could. Is that what you tell yourself when men die under your command?" The question cut deep. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "James used to say the same. We save who we can, mourn who we can't, and keep moving because the living need us more than the dead." Wise words. He was a wise man. Gentle, but wise. She pulled her knees up, that vulnerable pose from before. Nothing like a warrior. Something in her tone made him ask, "Is that what you wanted, a warrior?" Elena laughed softly. "I wanted what I had, a kind man who loved me, children who made me laugh. When that ended," she shrugged, "I stopped wanting. Easier that way." "And now?" She turned to look at him fully. Blood had dried in her hair. Soot streaked her jaw. But in the firelight she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with youth or innocence. "Now I'm starting to think wanting might not be as dangerous as I believed." The words hung between them, weighted with possibility. Talon felt something shift in his chest, like ice cracking on a frozen river. "Elena." "Don't!" She stood abruptly. "I need to check the wounded." He watched her walk away, spine straight despite her exhaustion. His organized life lay in ruins around him, scattered like shells after battle. The Apache had expected purity and youth. What he'd gotten was a woman who'd undone his control in ways he was only beginning to understand. But as he looked around the camp at the people alive because of her courage, at Black Wolf nodding respectfully to her, at the wounded raider boy she'd insisted on saving, Talon thought perhaps control had been overvalued anyway. When he finally returned to their lodge, she was already asleep, curled on her side of the fire. He studied her face, softer in sleep but still holding that strength he was learning to admire. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The raiders might return. The Mexican soldiers still threatened. The camp needed rebuilding. But tonight, his unexpected wife was safe. His people had survived. And somewhere in the chaos of battle, something had changed between them. Not love, not yet, but respect, partnership, and the beginning of something that might grow stronger than either of them expected. Talon settled onto his own bedding, rifle within reach out of habit. Before closing his eyes, he whispered into the darkness, "Thank you." He wasn't sure if he meant for her fighting skill, her healing touch, or simply for being nothing like what he'd wanted and everything he hadn't known he needed. But when she stirred slightly, murmuring something that might have been, "You're welcome," he smiled and let sleep take him. The war was far from over, but this battle, perhaps the most important one they'd won together. Part 4, After the Storm. The week following the raid passed in a blur of funeral rites and rebuilding. Talon watched Elena move through the camp like she'd always belonged there, tending wounded, organizing repairs, mediating disputes with quiet authority. The woman who'd arrived as an unwanted widow had become indispensable. "She's teaching the young women to shoot," his mother observed, joining him where he supervised the construction of new defensive barriers. "Maria says more want to learn." "The raid changed things," Talon replied. "We need every hand that can hold a weapon." "Is that all that's changed?" Her knowing look made him uncomfortable. "You watch her constantly now." "I'm watching everyone. That's what leaders do." His mother's laugh was dry as desert wind. "Leaders don't usually stare so long at one particular person, especially when that person bends to tend cook fires." Heat crept up his neck. "You have sewing to attend to. And you have a wife to talk to. Real talking, not just giving orders." She patted his arm. "That girl carries ghosts. Son, maybe it's time you learned about them." Ghosts? Yes. Eliana carried those. He'd seen them in her eyes during quiet moments, heard them in the Spanish lullabies she hummed while working. But how did one ask about such things? The opportunity came that evening. The wounded raider boy, Miguel, had healed enough to travel. Talon found Elena preparing supplies for his journey food, water, medicines. "That's too much," he said. "He's one boy. He has 3 younger siblings and a sick mother." She didn't look up from her packing. "He told me yesterday his father died in the same sickness that took my family." "So you're sending him home with enough to feed them all?" "Unless you object." Now she did look at him, that familiar challenge in her eyes. "No, it's generous." He sat beside her, picking up a bundle of dried meat to help pack. This sickness was the fever that swept through last winter. Her hands stilled. "Yes, it hit the Mexican settlements first, then spread to anyone who traded with them. James caught it at the trading post, brought it home without knowing. Not his fault, then." "I know that, knew it even then, but knowledge doesn't stop the anger." She resumed packing with sharp, efficient movements. "I was so angry. At him for dying, at God for taking my babies, at myself for surviving when they didn't." "Is that why you left your people?" "My people left me." The bitterness in her voice could have curdled milk. A woman who loses her entire family, clearly cursed, bad luck to associate with. Even my uncle, who'd raised me after my parents died, suggested I might be happier elsewhere. The cruelty of it made Talon's jaw clench. Among the Apache, widows were cared for, not cast out. "So you went to the White Mountain Band?" "James had friends there. They took me in, gave me purpose, but I was still the Mexican widow, the outsider. When your people needed an alliance." She shrugged. "I was the convenient solution. Unwanted there, unwanted here." "You're not unwanted." The words escaped before he could stop them. Elena's hands froze on the pack she was tying. "Since when?" she asked softly. "Since you organized our defense. Since you saved Black Wolf. Since you held that little girl and sang her to sleep." The thoughts tumbled through his mind, but what he said was, since you proved yourself useful. Useful. She tested the word like unfamiliar food. I suppose that's better than unwanted. I didn't mean... I know what you meant. She stood, lifting the packed supplies. And you're right. Useful is what matters. Being wanted is for young girls who still believe in stories. She left before he could respond. Taking the supplies to Miguel, Talon remained seated, frustrated by his clumsy words. His mother was right, he needed to learn how to talk to his wife beyond giving orders. The next morning brought new challenges. Joseph Standing Bear returned from a scouting mission with troubling news. The Mexican soldiers were closer than expected, less than 2 days' ride south. But they're not coming here. Joseph reported to the gathered council. They're heading east, toward the settlements, looking for someone specific. The villagers say, renegades. No, a woman, Mexican, traveling with Apache. Joseph's eyes flicked to where Elena stood with the other women, listening. They say she stole something valuable. The council erupted in voices. Talon held up a hand for silence, his mind racing. What did she supposedly steal? They wouldn't say, but they're offering gold for information. All eyes turned to Elena. She stood straight, chin raised, but Talon saw her hands clench in her skirts. I stole nothing, she said clearly, unless you count my own life when I left. We need the truth, Red Crow said, not unkindly but firm. If the Mexicans come here, they won't. Elena stepped forward. I know who leads them. Captain Mendoza, he had interest in my uncle's trading post, and in me after James died. Understanding dawned unpleasantly. He wanted you. He wanted what he thought I was, a grieving widow with no protection, desperate enough to accept his offers. Her smile was sharp as flint. He learned otherwise when I put a knife to his throat for trying to force the issue. Several warriors chuckled appreciatively. Even Black Wolf looked impressed. So it's personal vengeance he seeks. Red Crow mused. This changes things. We cannot harbor someone who brings Mexican soldiers to our camps. Then I'll leave. Elena's voice stayed steady, but Talon caught the tremor beneath. I've brought enough trouble. No. The word cracked like a whip. Talon stood, decision crystallizing. She's my wife, Apache now. We don't give our people to enemies. Even if it means war, someone asked. We're already at war. Always have been with those who'd take our land, our people. He looked around the circle. Who here hasn't lost someone to Mexican raids? Who here would trust their promises? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. The Mexicans had broken too many treaties, taken too much. Still, Red Crow said carefully, we should know what else might bring trouble. Elena, is there more to this story? She hesitated, then nodded. Captain Mendoza accused me of stealing from my uncle's store when I left. Documents, he claimed, trading permits that would prove illegal sales of weapons. Did you? I took my husband's papers, birth records for our children, our marriage certificate, his trading licenses. Nothing more. Her voice hardened. But Mendoza had been skimming profits, selling guns to raiders. My uncle knew but looked away for a cut. When I refused Mendoza's advances, he feared I'd expose him. So he brands you a thief to silence you, Talon concluded. And your uncle supports the lie to protect himself. Family. Elena's laugh was bitter. They're supposed to protect you. The council discussed options while Elena stood silent, isolated. Talon saw her shoulders draw in slightly, recognizing the posture of someone preparing for rejection. We could send her to another band, Black Wolf suggested, though without his usual venom. Let her disappear into the northern territories. Running makes us look guilty, Talon countered, and weak. Fighting the Mexican army makes us look dead, another warrior pointed out. The debate continued as the sun climbed higher. Elena suddenly spoke up. There's another way. The men turned to her, surprised by the interruption. "Miguel," she continued, "the boy we're sending home, his village is near the garrison. Let him carry a message to Mendoza." "Saying what?" "That I died in the raid. Have him describe seeing my body, burned with the others. Mendoza wants me silenced. Let him think the desert did it for him." The simplicity was elegant. Red Crow nodded slowly. "It could work, but would the boy be believed?" "I'll coach him," Elena said. "Give him details only someone who saw the bodies would know, and—" She hesitated. "I'll give him something of mine. My wedding ring from James. Mendoza would recognize it." Talon watched her twist the simple silver band she still wore, her last connection to her former life, and she'd sacrifice it for the band's safety. "It's decided then," Red Crow announced. "Prepare the boy. We'll send him tomorrow with the story." The council dispersed, leaving Talon and Elena alone by the fire. She still twisted the ring, lost in thought. "That ring means something to you," he observed. "It means everything and nothing." She pulled it off, studied it. "James made it himself from Mexican silver, said it would remind me I was loved, even when he was gone trading. Yet you'll give it up. What good are reminders of love from the dead when the living need protection?" She looked at him. "Would you hesitate to give up something precious to protect your people?" "No, but they're my people. You've been here barely 2 weeks. And in those weeks, who has welcomed me? Little Crow brings me flowers his sister picked. Maria asks my advice on herbs. Even your mother tolerates me now." Her voice softened. "This is more home than I've had since the sickness." "Home," the word lodged in his chest like an arrow. "Keep the ring," he said impulsively. "We'll find another way to convince Mendoza." "No, this is right." She held out the ring. "But perhaps, would you give it to Miguel? I don't think I can." He took the ring, surprised by its warmth from her skin. Such a small thing to carry such weight of memory. That night, he found her sitting alone by the river, knees drawn up, watching the water. The moon painted silver paths on the current. "You should be resting," he said, settling beside her. "Too many thoughts for sleep." She picked up a pebble, threw it into the water. "Do you ever wonder about paths not taken?" "Sometimes. If I'd married who my uncle chose, a Mexican merchant's son, my children might live. If James had stayed home that week instead of trading, he might live. So many ifs. If you'd married the merchant's son, you wouldn't have had those specific children. If James had stayed home, someone else might have brought the sickness." Talon picked up his own pebble, sent it skipping across the water. "We make choices with what we know. The rest is beyond our control." Spoken like a warrior. Spoken like someone who's led men to die and had to live with the choices. He was quiet for a moment. "I lost my first wife in childbirth. Spent years wondering if I'd chosen a different healer. If I'd been there instead of hunting. If. Nearly drove me mad." Elena turned to look at him, surprised. "I didn't know you'd been married before." 10 years ago. She was everything I thought I wanted young, sweet, obedient. Died bringing our son into the world. He lived 3 days. The old pain had scarred over, but touching it still ached. I swore I'd never marry again. Then the elders started pressuring me, and I thought if I must marry, I'd find someone completely different, someone who'd survive. So you asked for young and pure again." He laughed, recognizing the contradiction. "I asked for what I thought I could control. The spirits have a sense of humor, sending me you instead." "The spirits or meddling elders?" "Both, probably." He stood, offered her his hand. "Come, tomorrow brings enough challenges without facing them exhausted." She took his hand. Let him pull her up. For a moment they stood close, her face tilted up to his in the moonlight. Something passed between them, possibility, perhaps, or recognition. Then she stepped back, the moment broken. "Thank you for defending me today." You're my wife. It's my duty. Duty. She tested that word too. Is that all? He thought of her fierce courage in battle, her gentle hands on wounded children, her sacrifice of the ring that meant everything. No, not all. She smiled then, a real smile that transformed her face. Good, I'd hate to be just another duty to manage. They walked back to camp together, careful not to touch, but somehow closer than before. The lodge felt different when they entered, less like his space invaded and more like space shared. As they prepared for sleep on opposite sides of the fire, Elena spoke into the darkness. That woman who died your first wife, what was her name? Sarah. Sarah Quiet Rain. I'll remember her in my prayers, her and your son both. The unexpected kindness made his throat tight. And I'll remember James and your children. What were their names? James Jr. We called him Jimmy. Thomas, after his grandfather. And Rosa, my wild rose. Her voice carried love and loss in equal measure. Thank you for asking. They slept then, the fire burning low between them. But something had shifted in the darkness. Walls carefully maintained had begun to crumble, letting light through the cracks. Tomorrow, Miguel would leave with his supplies and lies. Mendoza would receive word of Elena's death. The camp would continue rebuilding. Life would move forward as it always did. But tonight, two people who'd lost everything had found something unexpected in each other. Not love. Not yet, but understanding. And perhaps that was enough to build on. The ghosts would always be there. Talon knew. Sarah and the baby. James and the children, they were woven into who he and Elena had become. But maybe, just maybe, the living could find space alongside the dead. As sleep took him, he heard Elena whisper something in Spanish, a prayer or a goodbye to the ring she'd sacrifice tomorrow, and he thought that perhaps his mother was right. Perhaps it was time to stop watching and start talking, really talking, to this complicated woman who'd upended his life. The Apache had expected purity and youth. What he'd gotten was so much more complex, so much more real, and somewhere between the battle and the river, between duty and choice, he'd begun to be grateful for it. Part 5, The Shadow of Judgment. 3 weeks had passed since Miguel carried Elena's ring and false death to Captain Mendoza. The ruse seemed to work. No Mexican soldiers had appeared seeking the stolen woman, but new tensions rippled through the camp like heat waves off summer stone. She brings darkness, Margaret White Dove whispered, loud enough for Elena to hear as she passed. First the raiders, now this. This referred to young Samuel Running Bear, son of a prominent family who'd gone missing during a hunting trip. 3 days of searching had yielded nothing but his abandoned horse and bloodied shirt. Elena continued walking, head high, but Talon saw the tightness around her eyes. The whispers had started small comments about the Mexican woman's presence coinciding with their troubles. Now they grew louder, fed by fear and old prejudices. Pay them no mind, Maria advised Elena as they prepared medicines together. People need someone to blame when afraid. I'm an easy target, Elena replied, grinding herbs with controlled force. The outsider, the widow, the one who shouldn't be here. Talon watched from across the camp, noting how she'd drawn into herself lately. The easy confidence from the raid's aftermath had dimmed, replaced by careful movements and measured words. That evening, the situation exploded. My son is dead, Samuel's mother, Rebecca, stormed into the central gathering space, dead because she brought evil to our camp. Elena stood slowly from where she'd been teaching young girls beadwork. I grieve with you, Rebecca, but I had nothing to do with Samuel's disappearance. Liar, you and your Mexican witchcraft, your foreign ways. My boy was strong, skilled. Only evil could have taken him. Evil or mountain cats or a fall from rocks. Elena countered steadily. The mountains hold many dangers. You dare speak of my son like some careless child, Rebecca advanced, and Talon moved to intervene, but Elena held up a hand to stop him. I speak as one who's lost children. They can be taken by fever, by raiders, by accidents we never see coming. Blaming others brings no peace. You lost children because you were cursed. Now you spread that curse here. Rebecca's voice cracked with grief and rage. The council should cast you out before more die. Murmurs of agreement rose from some gathered people. Others argued back, creating a cacophony of voices. Talon felt the community splitting like drought-cracked earth. Enough! Red Crow's voice cut through the noise. We are Apache. We don't turn on our own from fear. She's not our own. Robert Stonehammer spoke up, a rival of Talon's. He'd always resented not being chosen for leadership. She's Mexican, an outsider forced on us for alliance. She fought for us. Black Wolf countered unexpectedly. Saved lives. That makes her Apache in my eyes. The argument raged as the sun set. Elena stood in the center, isolated, dignity intact but pain clear in her stance, when a rock sailed from the crowd, barely missing her head. Talon had enough. The next person who throws anything throws it at me, he announced, stepping beside his wife. Elena is under my protection. Challenge her. You challenge me. Then maybe we should, Stonehammer suggested. You've grown weak, Talon, letting a woman influence your decisions, cloud your judgment. Has my judgment failed us? Talon swept his gaze across the crowd. Did I not lead us to victory against raiders? Have our alliances not held? Your judgment gave us her. Rebecca spat. And now my son. Her voice broke entirely. Elena moved then, approaching the grieving mother despite the hostile crowd. Rebecca, please, let me help search. I know tracking. Herbs that might help dogs find scent trails. If Samuel lives. Don't touch me, Rebecca stumbled back. Don't speak his name with your cursed tongue. The rejection hit Elena like a physical blow. Talon saw her shoulders drop, saw something vital dim in her eyes. Council meets tomorrow. Red Crow announced. We'll address these concerns properly. Tonight, everyone return to your lodges. Grief and anger make poor advisors. The crowd dispersed slowly, resentfully. Elena walked back to their lodge without a word, Talon following, inside. She moved mechanically, preparing the evening meal as if nothing had happened. Elena! Don't! Her voice was flat. Just don't! He watched her work, noting the tremor in her hands. When she reached for a water gourd, it slipped, shattering on the ground. She stared at the pieces, then slowly sank to her knees. I can't do this again, she whispered. I can't be the curse, the outsider, the one blamed for everything wrong. Her voice broke. I'm so tired of being unwanted. Talon knelt beside her, uncertain. He'd faced warriors in battle, led men through desperate situations. But a woman's tears unmanned him entirely. You're not unwanted, he said awkwardly. Aren't I? She looked up, eyes bright with unshed tears. Tell me honestly if you could choose again, knowing everything, would you still accept me? The question hung between them. Talon thought of his ordered life before her arrival, the simple plans that had crumbled. Then he thought of her courage during the raid, her compassion for the wounded, the way she'd sacrificed her most precious possession for the band's safety. Yes, he said simply, I would choose you. Something in her face crumbled. The tears came then, silent but devastating. Without thinking, Talon pulled her against him, holding her as she shook with suppressed sobs. They hate me, she whispered against his chest. Just like my uncle's people. I try so hard, but it's never enough. Not everyone hates you. Maria doesn't. Black Wolf doesn't. I don't. You tolerate me. There's a difference. He pulled back, made her look at him. Woman, I have never just tolerated anything in my life. You think I'd share my lodge with someone I merely tolerated? You think I'd defend someone I didn't value? Then what do you feel? The question escaped her like blood from a wound. Because I need to know if I have any reason to stay and fight, or if I should disappear into the desert and save everyone trouble. What did he feel? The question he'd avoided since her arrival demanded an answer. Talon studied her face, not young, not innocent, but beautiful in its strength and sorrow. This woman who'd challenged everything he thought he wanted. I feel, he struggled for words, like you've kicked over my life and I'm not sorry about it. Like watching you makes me understand there's more than one way to be strong. Like... A commotion outside interrupted. Shouts, running feet. They emerged to find riders arriving the search party, and with them, impossibly, Samuel Running Bear, alive but barely, draped over a horse. We found him at the bottom of Skeleton Canyon, Joseph reported as people gathered. Fell from the rim, caught on a ledge halfway down. Took 3 men with ropes to reach him. Elena immediately moved to help, but Rebecca blocked her path. Stay away from him. I have medicines that could help, Elena protested. Please, Rebecca. I said stay away. The woman's grief had transformed to protective fury. You've done enough. Let her help, Samuel whispered weakly. Mother, please, I dreamed. She sang to me while I lay there. Spanish songs. Kept me hoping. Everyone stared. Elena stepped forward cautiously. You heard singing. Like my grandmother used to sing? Made me think of home, of holding on. He managed a weak smile. Maybe I was dying and heard angels, but it helped. Elena's intake of breath was sharp. She moved to the boy despite his mother's protests, checking his injuries with gentle hands. Broken ribs, damaged shoulder, but no bleeding inside that I can feel. He needs willow bark tea, boneset poultice. She worked, Rebecca hovering uncertainly nearby. As Elena tended the boy, she began humming the same Spanish lullaby Talon had heard before. Samuel's eyes widened. That's it, he breathed. That's what I heard. Impossible, someone muttered. She was here. Sometimes, Elena said quietly, not looking up from her work. The spirits carry songs where they're needed. My mother believed love could travel any distance to comfort the hurting. It was explanation and mystery combined, leaving room for belief or skepticism. But Samuel relaxed under her care, and gradually Rebecca's hostility cracked. Will he heal? The mother asked. With time and care, yes, the mountain gave him back. That's what matters. Rebecca studied Elena for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I spoke in grief and fear. I apologize. Grief needs no apology. I understand better than most. Elena finished binding Samuel's ribs. He should rest now. As the crowd dispersed, the mood had shifted. Not completely Stonehammer and others still watched Elena with suspicion, but Samuel's survival and strange story had blunted the worst hostility. That night, the council met as promised. Talon attended, leaving Elena in their lodge. The debate was fierce but shorter than expected. The woman brings strangeness, Stonehammer argued. Even if not deliberately evil, she disrupts our ways. All change disrupts. Red Crow countered. Should we cast out everyone who brings new ideas? Reject all alliances because they challenge tradition? She saved my life, Black Wolf stated flatly. My debt stands regardless of council decision. She healed my grandson, added William Benttree, speaking for the first time. Used knowledge our healers don't have. That's worth more than whispers. In the end, the vote wasn't close. Elena would stay, protected as Talon's wife and earning her place through actions. Stonehammer stormed out, taking his supporters, but the majority held. Talon returned to find Elena sitting by their fire, staring into flames. The council decided, you stay. Until the next crisis, the next blame. She sounded exhausted. There's always another test, another proof required. I'm tired of proving I deserve to exist. He sat beside her, choosing words carefully. Earlier, you asked what I feel. I didn't finish answering. She glanced at him, wary. I feel protective. Not because you need protection, but because you're mine to protect. I feel proud when you stand strong against hostility. I feel... He paused, then pushed through. I feel like my lodge is home when you're in it and empty when you're not. Talon. I'm not finished. You asked if I would choose you again. Yes. But more, I'm glad the choice was forced on me. Glad my expectations were shattered, because what I expected was shallow compared to what I received. Elena studied him in the firelight, searching his face. You mean that... I don't say what I don't mean. The Apache expected purity and youth, she murmured, echoing words from their first meeting. What you got was a curvy woman who undid your control. Yes, he agreed. And I'm beginning to think losing control might not be the disaster I feared. She smiled then, small but real. Your life was very ordered before. Ordered, predictable, safe. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You've brought chaos, also courage, cleverness, compassion. The trade seems fair, even with counsels and accusations and rocks thrown. Rocks can be dodged, a life half-lived cannot. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the camp settled for night, peace restored for now. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Stonehammer's resentment wouldn't fade easily, and others still harbored doubts. But tonight, Elena was recognized as belonging. Samuel lived because of her care, and something deeper than duty had finally been acknowledged between them. Thank you, Elena said softly, for standing with me, for speaking truth even when difficult. Thank you, he replied, for staying when leaving would be easier, for fighting for a place here despite everything. Where would I go? She leaned slightly against his shoulder, the first voluntary closeness she'd initiated. This is home now. You said so yourself. Home. Yes, their lodge had become that, not just shelter, but sanctuary. Shared space where two damaged people were learning to trust. Elena, he began, then stopped. Too soon for the words building in his chest. But she seemed to understand, pressing closer against his side. I know, she whispered. Me too, when it's time. They watched the fire die to embers, neither moving to bank it or retire. Sometimes the most important moments needed no words, only presence, acceptance, and the slow recognition that what began as necessity had transformed into choice. The shadows of judgment would always lurk from Stonehammer, from those who feared change, from their own histories of loss. But shadows only existed where light shone. And perhaps, Talon thought as Elena dozed against his shoulder, that light was worth defending against any darkness that came. Part 6, The Turning Point. The autumn moon hung low and orange when Stonehammer made his move. Talon had expected something. His rival's resentment had festered like an untreated wound since the council's decision. But the form it took surprised everyone. I challenge the Union, Stonehammer announced at the harvest gathering, his voice cutting through celebration. By ancient law, I claim the woman was wrongly given. Silence fell like a stone into water. Elena's hand found Talon's arm, fingers tight with tension. Red Crow stood slowly, his weathered face grave. On what grounds? She was promised to the Chiricahua band, but no proper bride price was paid. The White Mountain people sent damaged goods a widow, not a maiden. By our laws, the contract is void. Stonehammer's smile was sharp as an obsidian blade. I offer to take her instead, paying proper compensation to both bands. The insult was calculated to wound. Elena's face flushed, but she held her silence as tradition demanded during formal challenges. The agreement was for a wife, Talon said, controlling his fury with effort. Elena fulfills that requirement. Does she, a wife brings honor, bears children, strengthens the band. This woman brings only trouble and foreign influence. Stonehammer addressed the crowd now, playing to fears he'd cultivated. How many have died or suffered since her arrival, the raids? Young Samuel's near death. The Mexican soldiers sniffing at our borders. Correlation without causation, Elena muttered in Spanish, earning a sharp look from several elders who understood the language. Furthermore, Stonehammer continued, she practices arts learned from our enemies. Mexican healing, Catholic prayers mixed with our ceremonies. She corrupts our pure ways. Our pure ways. Black Wolf stood unexpectedly. Our ways that include raiding Mexican settlements for horses, trading with American soldiers for rifles. Purity is a luxury we surrendered long ago for survival. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Stonehammer's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected opposition from that quarter. The challenge stands. He insisted. Let Talon prove his claim through combat, or surrender the woman to one who can truly lead. There it was, the real purpose. Not Elena, but leadership. Using her as the wedge to split Talon's support. Combat Talon stood, hand moving instinctively to his knife. You challenge me directly. I challenge your judgment, your strength, your right to lead when you cannot even control one woman. Elena surged to her feet. I am not property to be controlled or transferred. Women don't speak during, Stonehammer began. This woman does. Her voice carried across the gathering like a whip crack. You want to discuss corruption. Let's discuss who's been meeting with Mexican traders at Skeleton Ridge, exchanging information for silver. Stonehammer's face darkened. You dare accuse? I dare speak what Samuel Running Bear saw while injured in the canyon. What he told me while I tended his wounds. Elena stepped forward. He saw you below, talking with uniformed men, Mexican soldiers, seeking information about a certain stolen woman. The crowd erupted. Accusations flew, denials roared. Hands moved to weapons. Red Crow's staff struck the ground repeatedly, calling for order. Lies, Stonehammer snarled. The boy was delirious. Then let him speak, Talon suggested coldly. Samuel, come forward. The young man limped into the firelight, still weak but determined. I saw what I saw. Stonehammer met with 3 Mexican soldiers. Money changed hands. I heard my name mentioned, and Elena's. You would have sold us all for silver. Rebecca Running Bear's voice shook with rage. My son almost died because of your treachery. The boy misunderstood. Did I misunderstand this? Joseph Standing Bear stepped forward, holding a leather pouch. Found hidden in your lodge while you were here grandstanding. Mexican coins, fresh minted. More than a warrior should have from honest trade. Stonehammer's hand dropped to his weapon, but found himself surrounded by drawn steel. His supporters melted away like snow in spring sun. The challenge is withdrawn. Red Crow announced with finality. Stonehammer, you stand accused of betraying the band. The council will decide your fate. This isn't over, Stonehammer hissed at Talon. You think you've won. You've merely delayed. His words cut off as Black Wolf's knife pressed against his throat. Threaten my war chief again. Please, give me the excuse. As Stonehammer was led away, the gathering tried to recapture its festive mood but failed. Too much had been revealed. Too many wounds opened. Talon and Elena returned to their lodge in tense silence. You knew, he said finally, about Stonehammer's meetings. Samuel told me in confidence. I was waiting for proof before speaking. She paced the lodge like a caged mountain cat. I'm tired of being the excuse for every power struggle, every grievance. This wasn't about you. It was about me. Leadership, old rivalries. It's always about me, she whirled to face him. The Mexican widow, the outsider, the convenient target. Stonehammer just said what others think that I'm damaged goods. A burden. Stop! Talon caught her shoulders. You're none of those things. Aren't I? Tell me honestly, has your life improved since I arrived? Have I brought anything but conflict? You've brought change, growth, challenge to complacency. Pretty words. She pulled away. But Stonehammer was right about one thing. I haven't given you children. A true wife would have by now. The pain in her voice stopped him cold. Elena, 3 months sharing your lodge, and nothing. Maybe I am cursed. Maybe the sickness left me barren as well as bereaved. Or maybe, he said carefully, we've been too careful with each other, too polite, too distant despite sharing space. She looked at him then, truly looked, and he saw the depth of her fear, not of him but of hope, of wanting something that might be snatched away. The night of the raid, she whispered, when we almost... I wanted to let go, to feel something besides grief and anger, but I was terrified. If I let you close and then lost you too. I'm not going anywhere. James said that. Every traitor says that when they leave. Her voice broke. Then they don't come back, and you're left with empty promises and cold beds. Talon crossed to her in 2 strides, caught her face between his hands. I'm not James. I'm not a traitor. I'm a warrior who survived 34 winters by being too stubborn to die. And I'm your husband, whether Stonehammer or anyone else likes it. My husband. She tested the words. We speak around it, live around it, but never truly. The Apache expected purity and youth. Stop quoting that at me. His thumb stroked her cheekbones. Yes, I expected something different, something less. What I got was a woman who fights like a warrior, heals like a medicine singer, thinks like a chief, who undid my control not through weakness but strength. Talon, let me finish. You asked if my life improved since you arrived. Yes, not easier, better. You've made me better, made me think beyond tradition. Lead with wisdom, not just strength. The band is stronger for your presence, whether they all see it yet or not. Tears tracked down her cheeks, but she was smiling. You're saying sweet words to make me stop arguing. Is it working? Maybe. She leaned into his touch. But Stonehammer will cause more trouble. Others still doubt. The challenges won't stop. Then we face them together, as we should have from the beginning instead of circling each other like wary dogs. A scratching at the lodge entrance interrupted. War Chief, Little Crow's voice. Urgent. Red Crow summons you. Stonehammer has escaped. They found chaos at the council lodge. 2 guards lay unconscious. Bonds cut where Stonehammer had been held. He had help, Joseph reported grimly. 3, maybe 4 riders, headed south toward Mexican territory. He'll bring them here, someone said. Trade our location for sanctuary. Or gold. Another added. He knows our defenses, our numbers. I'll take warriors. Track them. Talon decided. Stop them before they reach the garrison. It could be a trap, Elena warned. Drawing you out to leave the band vulnerable. What choice do we have? She studied the cut bonds, the tracks. These were cut from outside, not by Stonehammer himself, but look. She pointed to marks in the dust. Boot prints. Mexican military boots. You're saying soldiers were already here in our camp. Close enough to act when signaled. Her face was grim. This was planned. Stonehammer's challenge was meant to succeed or create chaos. Either way, it gave his allies opportunity. Red Crow's expression darkened. If soldiers have infiltrated our territory, we need to move the band. Talon concluded. Tonight, to the winter grounds early. That's 3 days through exposed country, Joseph protested. With children and elders. Better than sitting here waiting for attack. Talon's mind raced through possibilities. We leave false trails, split into smaller groups, reconverge at Eagle's Rest. I know another way, Elena said quietly. Through Weeping Woman Canyon. Longer but hidden. James showed me years ago when we traded with the mountain bands. That's sacred ground, someone protested. Forbidden to outsiders. She's not an outsider, Talon said firmly. And sacred ground might be the only thing that saves us. The next hours blurred together packing, organizing, preparing for desperate flight. Elena worked alongside other women, but Talon noticed the new respect in their movements. Stonehammer's treachery had shifted perspective, making her foreign knowledge valuable rather than suspect. As dawn approached, the band moved out in careful groups. Talon led the warriors. Elena guided the main body through hidden paths. The journey would test everyone, but staying meant certain death. At the first rest, Elena found him checking defensive positions. We need to talk about Stonehammer's accusation. Which one? About children, about my worth as a wife. She kept her voice steady. But he heard the pain beneath. If I can't give you heirs, then we adopt orphans, or raise my sister's children, or simply grow old together without them. He touched her face. Children would be a gift, but you are enough, more than enough. You say that now. I say that always. He pulled her close, uncaring who might see. Stonehammer measured worth by old standards, breeding and obedience. I measure it by courage, wisdom, partnership. By those measures, you're worth more than all his traditionalist dreams. She buried her face against his chest. When did you become wise about such things? When a curvy woman undid my control and taught me to think differently. Her laugh was muffled but real. Using my own words against me. They're good words, true words. He pulled back to see her face. When we reach safety, we stop dancing around each other. We become truly married, not just bound by ceremony. Is that a threat or promise? Both. Neither. A declaration of intent. Then I declare the same. She stretched up, kissed him firmly despite the public setting. No more careful distance, no more protection from hurt. If we're doing this, we do it fully. A scout's whistle cut the moment short riders approaching. They scrambled for positions, but it was only their rear guard reporting all clear. The band moved on, deeper into hidden country. By nightfall, they'd covered half the distance to Eagle's Rest. No sign of pursuit, but Talon kept guards doubled. Stonehammer knew their patterns, their weaknesses. He'd strike when least expected. Elena found him on watch, brought him food. The people are frightened but holding. Your mother is telling stories to keep spirits up. And you? Checking our back trail for boot prints, training young women to spot signs of infiltration. She settled beside him. Stonehammer's escape wasn't random. Someone's been planning this. Mendoza. Perhaps, or someone using him. She stared into darkness. My uncle had connections beyond simple trading. Men who played larger games, moving tribes like chess pieces. You think this is bigger than revenge? I think Stonehammer was a tool. Whether he knew it or not, remove strong leadership, create chaos, move in to restore order. Her voice turned bitter. I've seen it before. Different players. Same game. Then we changed the rules. Talon studied her profile in moonlight. Your knowledge of their tactics becomes our strength. Our strength? She smiled slightly. I like the sound of that. They sat in companionable silence, watching stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring more challenges reaching Eagle's Rest, fortifying positions, preparing for whatever Stonehammer and his allies planned. But tonight, they'd survived betrayal, saved the band, declared intentions that would reshape their future. The careful dance was ending, replaced by something stronger, true partnership forged in crisis. No regrets, Elena asked softly. Only one, Talon admitted, that it took disaster to make us honest with each other. Better late than not at all. She leaned against him. Though I could have done without being fought over like a prize horse. You're no one's prize. You're my choice, my match, my equal. Sweet words again. True words. Always true words with you. The night wind carried the scent of pine and possibility. Somewhere in the darkness, enemies plotted. But here, now, two people who'd begun as strangers had become something more. Not yet the full union they'd declared intent for, but close. Getting closer with each shared challenge, each revealed truth. The Apache had expected purity and youth. What he'd gotten was a partner for whatever battles lay ahead. And as Elena dozed against his shoulder while he kept watch, Talon knew with certainty that no traditional bride could have given him what this complicated, courageous woman had a future worth fighting for, together. Part 7, Scars and Hope. Eagle's Rest proved a haven in more ways than one. The natural fortification of high cliffs and narrow approaches gave the band security, while hidden springs and game trails provided sustenance. But it was the unity forged through shared hardship that truly strengthened them. Stonehammer's betrayal cut deep, Red Crow observed, watching Elena teach defensive tactics to a group of young women. But perhaps we needed cutting to heal properly. Talon nodded, noting how even Margaret White Dove, once Elena's harshest critic, now listened intently to instruction. Crisis has a way of clarifying what matters. 2 weeks had passed since their flight. Scouts reported Mexican patrols searching the abandoned camp area, but the false trails held. Stonehammer hadn't been seen, though rumors placed him at the garrison, trading information for gold and protection. "Let him rot there," Black Wolf spat when the subject arose. "A warrior who sells his people deserves no remembrance." But Elena worried. "He knows too much. Our numbers, our wounded, which families have young children. Information is a weapon in the wrong hands." She'd proven prescient about larger games at play. Intercepted messages revealed Mexican authorities working with American interests, each seeking to control Apache territories for different reasons: land, minerals, strategic positioning. "They'll come eventually," Elena told the council. "When they realize we won't be easily found, they'll try other tactics: starvation, division, false promises. Then we prepare," Talon decided. "Not just for war, but for survival as a people." The preparation took many forms. Traditional skills were taught alongside new ones: Elena's knowledge of preserving foods through Mexican methods, treating wounds with Catholic mission techniques, even basic Spanish for intelligence gathering. Not everyone embraced change easily. Thomas Elkhorn complained about foreign influences corrupting Apache ways, but his wife silenced him by pointing out their daughter lived because of Elena's healing knowledge. "Adaptation is survival," became Elena's quiet motto, repeated as she worked tirelessly to blend cultures in practical ways. One morning, Talon found her sitting by the spring, staring at her reflection with an unreadable expression. "Regrets?" he asked, settling beside her. "Observations." She touched the water, dispersing her image. "I don't recognize myself anymore. Not Mexican, not fully Apache, something between." "Is that bad?" "Different. I spent so long trying to fit into boxes: good Mexican daughter, proper trader's wife, acceptable Apache woman. Now," she shrugged, "now I'm just Elena, whatever that means." "It means," he said carefully, "the woman who saved Black Wolf, who healed Samuel, who led us through sacred paths to safety, who teaches our people to survive in changing times." Pretty words. "Truth." He took her hand. "You've become what the band needed, even if we didn't know we needed it." She squeezed his fingers. "And you, have you become what you needed?" The question made him think. The rigid warrior who'd wanted a controllable wife seemed like a stranger now. In his place sat a leader who consulted rather than commanded, who valued wisdom over tradition, who'd learned that strength came in many forms. "I'm becoming," he admitted, still learning who that is. Together. Always together. Their renewed closeness hadn't gone unnoticed. His mother had taken to humming whenever she saw them walking hand in hand, while Maria made pointed comments about preparing infant supplies. just in case. The pressure might have been uncomfortable, but Elena handled it with growing confidence. When the spirits decide, she'd say with a smile that didn't quite hide the lingering worry in her eyes. Talon tried to ease that worry in small ways, bringing her flowers from patrol, sharing private meals away from communal fires, holding her through nightmares that still came sometimes. Slowly, the careful distance they'd maintained dissolved entirely. The change became clear during the autumn hunt. Traditionally, women stayed at camp while men pursued game, but food scarcity demanded new approaches. "We need every skilled hunter," Talon announced, "man or woman." Elena led a group of women who'd learned shooting, while traditional hunters took another direction. The combined effort brought down 2 elk and several deer, enough to see them through coming hardships. That night's celebration felt different. No longer did people cluster in suspicious groups. Warriors who'd once resented Elena now praised her group's success. Women who'd whispered about the Mexican widow now asked her advice openly. "You did this," Rebecca Running Bear told Elena as they prepared the feast. "Showed us we could be more than we thought." "We did this," Elena corrected. "I just reminded you of strength you already had." Later, as drums beat and people danced, Talon pulled Elena aside. "Dance with me." "Chiefs don't dance with their wives at public gatherings," she protested even as she followed. "This chief does?" He spun her into the firelight, ignoring surprised looks. "Let them see we're not bound by every tradition." Others followed their lead, Joseph dancing with his usually shy wife. Young couples joining openly instead of stealing moments in shadows. The rigid social structure that Stonehammer had exploited cracked a little more, letting warmth through. "You're destroying proper Apache behavior," Elena laughed as they moved together. "Improving it," he countered, making space for joy alongside duty. The dance ended with her in his arms, both breathless and grinning. Around them, the band celebrated not just successful hunts but survival, adaptation, unity forged through trials. But morning brought sobering news. A lone Apache rider approached under truce signs Stonehammer's nephew, Paul Whitehorse, who'd been away during the betrayal. "I carry words from the garrison," he announced formally. "Terms for peace." The council gathered, tension thick. Paul looked haggard, ashamed of his uncle's actions but bound by duty to deliver the message. "Captain Mendoza offers forgiveness for past conflicts," he recited. "Safe conduct to reservation lands with supplies provided. All he asks is return of stolen property and the surrender of the Mexican woman Elena for trial." "Still hunting ghosts," Elena murmured. "The man can't accept I simply left." "These terms are refused," Talon stated flatly. Then he promises war, not just soldiers but Apache scouts from reservation bands. Brother against brother until you submit. The threat chilled everyone. Fighting Mexicans was one thing, fighting other Apache another entirely. "Your uncle serves them willingly," Black Wolf demanded. Paul's shame deepened. He says accommodation is survival, that the old ways are dead, better to bend than break. "Better to die free than live chained," someone countered. Arguments erupted, fight or negotiate, resist or accommodate. Elena stood suddenly, commanding attention. "There's another way. Paul, does Mendoza still believe I'm dead?" "My uncle told him you lived, but he doubts. Says he needs proof your body or your presence." "Then give him proof," she smiled grimly. "Of death, not life. Paul, you'll return saying you found evidence of my burial site. Take this." She removed a necklace, one of her last valuable possessions. "Say you dug it from a grave. Describe decomposition, animal interference. Make him believe searching is pointless. Lie to the Mexicans. Redirect their assumptions. Meanwhile, we send messages to reservation bands about Stonehammer's betrayal, how he sells Apache blood for gold. Undermine his influence." "And if that fails?" Red Crow asked. "Then we disappear deeper, become ghosts in truth, striking when necessary. fading when pursued, but always free. The plan wasn't perfect, but it offered hope beyond warfare or surrender. Paul agreed to carry the deception, his desire to restore family honor overcoming reluctance to deceive. As he prepared to leave, he approached Elena privately. "My uncle was wrong about you. You bring not curse but cleverness. I apologize for my family's shame." "Families aren't responsible for individual choices," she replied. "You came under truce, spoke honestly. That takes courage." After Paul left, preparation intensified. If the deception failed, they needed to be ready for anything. But spirits remained higher than expected. Elena's plan gave them agency rather than mere reaction. "You think like a traitor," Talon observed that evening. "Seeing angles others miss. James taught me that survival often meant outthinking rather than outfighting." She leaned against him, watching sunset paint the cliffs. "Though I prefer your Apache directness most times." "Only most... well, sometimes subtle has advantages." She turned in his arms, mischief in her eyes. "Like how I've slowly convinced you to abandon half your rigid rules without realizing." "I realized. Just decided the trade was worthwhile." "Oh, what trade exactly?" "My control for your partnership, my isolation for your warmth, my narrow vision for your broader wisdom." "You're learning too many pretty words," she accused, but her kiss suggested she didn't mind. As stars emerged, the camp settled into watchful peace. Tomorrow would bring Paul's return, success or failure of their deception. Winter approached with its own challenges. But tonight, Talon held his wife, truly his wife now in every way that mattered, and felt hope stubborn as desert flowers. They'd survived betrayal, exodus, attempts to divide them. Whatever came next, they'd face together. "No matter what happens," Elena whispered against his chest, "I want you to know these months have been worth everything. Even if—" "No even ifs," he interrupted. "We're too stubborn for tragic endings. Ask anyone I'm relentless and you're impossible. Together we're inevitable." Her laugh was answer enough. Around them, the band slept secure in hidden valleys, changed but stronger for it. The Apache had expected purity and youth, control and tradition. Instead, he'd found partnership and growth, challenge and transformation. And in that finding, a scattered people had discovered they could be more than survival. They could thrive, adapt, remain free, not through rigid tradition or complete abandonment of ways, but through the difficult balance Elena embodied. Between cultures, between worlds, between what was and what could be. It was there, in that space between, that hope lived, scarred but breathing, tested but unbroken, ready for whatever dawn would bring. Part 8, Freedom Together. The winter sun cast long shadows across Eagle's Rest as Paul Whitehorse returned with news that would shape their future. His face bore the exhaustion of hard riding, but also something else, hope mixed with urgency. "Mendoza believed the deception," he reported to the gathered council. "The necklace, the details of decay he's convinced Elena died months ago. He's withdrawn most patrols, focusing on other matters." Relief rippled through the assembly, but Paul raised his hand. "There's more. Stonehammer is dead." Silence fell like a hammer strike. Even those who'd wished him ill felt the weight of an Apache warrior's passing. "How?" Red Crow asked. "Killed by Mexican soldiers when he demanded more gold. They'd gotten what they needed and saw him as a liability." Paul's voice held no sympathy. "He died alone, cursing everyone, them, us, the spirits themselves." "A fitting end for a traitor," Black Wolf muttered, but others looked thoughtful. Stonehammer's death served as a warning about trusting enemies who viewed Apache as tools rather than people. "There's something else," Paul continued, glancing at Ellen. "Before he died, Stonehammer spoke of documents hidden in your uncle's trading post, papers that prove illegal weapon sales, connections to men in high places. The Mexicans seek them desperately. Elena straightened. James's trading licenses. I took only personal papers, but he kept detailed records of every transaction. If those fell into the wrong hands, they could expose corruption reaching to Mexico City and Washington both. Talon finished. No wonder Mendoza hunts so persistently. We could use them. Joseph suggested bargaining chips for our freedom. Or targets on our backs. Elena countered. Men who traffic in such secrets don't leave witnesses. The council debated through the afternoon, retrieve the documents, or let sleeping dangers lie. Finally, Elena proposed a middle path. We send word through trusted traders that the documents burned with the raid on our old camp. Let all sides believe the threat ended. Meanwhile, we fade deeper into the mountains, become the ghosts we planned. It wasn't glorious, but it was wise. The vote carried, and plans shifted toward long-term invisibility rather than confrontation. That evening, Talon found Elena by their lodge, working on a new cradle board. The sight stopped him short, hope made manifest in carved wood and soft leather. Maria insists we'll need it soon, she said without looking up, though color touched her cheeks. Says the signs are clear. And you, what do you say? She set the work aside, meeting his eyes. I say Maria is usually right about such things, but I'm trying not to hope too hard. Hope has cost me before. He knelt beside her, taking her hands. This isn't before. You're not alone now. I know. That's what terrifies me most. I have more to lose. More to fight for, he corrected. We've survived everything else. We'll survive this too, whatever comes. She studied his face, then smiled soft and real. When did you become the optimistic one? When a curvy woman undid my control and taught me that some things are worth the risk. Winter deepened around them, but life continued. The band adapted to their hidden valley, creating new traditions from necessity. Elena's influence showed everywhere in the mixed healing practices. The broader roles for women, the blending of cultures that strengthened rather than weakened. Not everyone approved. Thomas Elkhorn still grumbled about foreign ways, and a few families talked of leaving for reservation life. But most stayed, building something new from the ashes of the old. Spring brought confirmation of Maria's prediction. Elena's pregnancy became obvious, along with 2 other women who'd conceived during the Winter of Unity. The band celebrated quietly but deeply. New life promised continuation despite everything. I'm frightened, Elena admitted one night, her hand resting on her growing belly. What if I lose this one too? What if I'm not strong enough? You're the strongest person I know, Talon said firmly. You've survived loss, betrayal, exile. You've led us to safety, taught us to thrive. This child will be blessed to have you as mother. Our child, she corrected. Ours. The simple word held volumes. Not his child that she carried, but theirs partnership made flesh, future given form. As her time approached, the entire band mobilized. Women prepared the birthing lodge. Men increased hunting to ensure plentiful food. Children gathered herbs Elena had taught them to recognize. Even Thomas Elkhorn contributed, grudgingly admitting her knowledge had value. See what you've done, Talon teased as Elena directed preparations from where she rested. United the band through sheer stubborn refusal to fit expectations. I had help, a certain warrior who chose partnership over tradition. The Apache expected purity and youth, he quoted, making her laugh. What he got was a curvy woman who undid his control. She finished. Though I'm considerably curvier now. And I'm thoroughly undone, completely, happily. Labor came with summer rain, unusual for the desert but fitting for a child born between worlds. Elena faced it with the same courage she'd shown in battle, while Talon paced outside like every nervous father before him. She's strong, his mother assured him. Both of them are. Still, the hours dragged like years. Other women came and went from the birthing lodge, bringing water, carrying bloodied cloths that made his heart stutter. Maria's face stayed calm, but he caught worry in her eyes. Then, as dawn broke, a sound split the air, not a cry of pain, but of life. A baby's wail, strong and insistent. "A daughter," Maria announced, emerging with a bundle, healthy, loud, and already demanding as her mother. Talon took his daughter with shaking hands, marveling at tiny fingers that gripped his with surprising strength. Her skin held both parents' coloring, not quite Apache, not quite Mexican, but perfectly herself. Elena. Tired, but well. You can see her soon. Maria smiled. She says to tell you the baby has your stubborn chin and her impossible nature. When finally allowed inside, he found Elena propped against furs, exhausted but radiant. Their daughter nursed contentedly, making small sounds of satisfaction. "She's perfect," Elena murmured. "Look what we made." "What should we call her?" "I thought Hope in Apache, of course, but Hope for what she represents." Hope. He tested the name, found it fitting. Born between storms, between worlds, between what was and what will be. Like her parents. They sat in comfortable silence, their daughter between them, living proof that from conflict could come creation. From difference could come strength. The band welcomed Hope with joy tempered by reality. They remained fugitives, hidden in mountains while the world changed around them. Reports filtered through of reservations filling, traditional lands seized, ways of life ending. But here, in their hidden valley, something else grew. Not the pure Apache culture Stonehammer had demanded, nor the complete assimilation others pushed. Something new, forged by necessity and shaped by wisdom. "She'll grow up free," Elena said one evening, watching Hope sleep. "Not easy, but free. Because of you, your courage to be different, to challenge, to survive." "Because of us," she corrected. "Apart. We were incomplete. Together. Together we're impossible," he finished, making her smile. As seasons turned, Hope grew strong and curious, embodying her name. She learned Apache from her father, Spanish from her mother, English from traders who occasionally found their hidden camp. She played with Black Wolf's grandson, learned healing from Maria, rode before she could properly walk. "She's wild," Thomas Elkhorn complained, but fondly now. Even he had been won over by the child who belonged to everyone and no one, who represented their adapted future. Other children followed Joseph's son, Rebecca's twin daughters, a small generation born into the new way. They would know hardship, certainly, but also possibility. "No regrets?" Talon asked one night, 5 years after that first meeting by the fire. Elena looked around their lodge, expanded now, filled with their daughter's laughter, decorated with items from 3 cultures blended into something unique. "How could I regret this? The life you might have had, safety, acceptance, normalcy." "I had normal. It died with fever. This," she gestured to encompass everything. "This is better, harder but richer, lonelier sometimes, but never alone." "The Apache expected," he began, grinning. "If you quote that at me one more time, husband, you'll be sleeping with the horses." "You wouldn't. You love me too much." "I love you exactly enough, which is why you're impossible to live with and impossible to live without." He pulled her close, their daughter asleep between them, outside. Their adapted band continued not what anyone had planned or expected, but what they'd built from necessity and hope. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For being nothing I wanted and everything I needed. For undoing my control and giving me freedom instead." Pretty words, warrior. True words, always true words with you. As stars wheeled overhead and their daughter dreamed safe between them, Talon thought about expectations and reality, about control and freedom, about the winding path that had led them here. The Apache had expected purity and youth. What he'd gotten was a curvy woman who undid his control. And in that undoing, that breaking of rigid expectations, they'd found something neither had dared hope for, a love that transcended loss, a partnership that strengthened both, a future worth every struggle to achieve. Not the ending anyone had planned, but perhaps that's what made it perfect: messy, complicated, real. Like the woman in his arms, like the life they'd chosen, like freedom itself, costly but precious beyond measure. In the hidden valley where Apache ways merged with Mexican wisdom and American pragmatism, where children grew up speaking 3 languages and knowing multiple paths to survival, the future took shape one choice at a time. And at its heart, a warrior and a widow who'd found in each other not what they'd expected, but what they'd needed: partnership, challenge, growth, and ultimately, love strong enough to build a new world from the ashes of the old. The Apache had expected purity and youth. What he'd gotten was so much more. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and exchange thoughts about this tale. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night, like this video, and hit the hype button to help more people discover these narratives of the American frontier.